Let's first focus on multiplication and start with a simple example. 1 over 2 times 3 over 4. Multiplying fractions is very simple because common denominators are not necessary, like with adding and subtracting fractions. Just multiply the numerators together and multiply the denominators together. Numerator times numerator divided by denominator times denominator. That's all we have to do. 1 times 3 is 3 and 2 times 4 is 8. So we get 3 over 8. That's it. Now let's look at this example. 5 over 7 multiplied with 2 over 3. 5 times 2 is 10 and 7 times 3 is 21. What about this one? 1 over 3 times negative 5 over 8. 1 times 5 is 5 and 3 times 8 is 24. And don't forget the negative sign, because a positive times a negative is negative, so the new fraction is negative. So we get negative 5 over 24. Let's do something a bit more challenging. 13 over 14 times 7 over 2. 13 times 7 is 91 and 14 times 2 is 28. You should always give your answer in the simplest form, so we must reduce the fraction to its lowest terms. We do this by factoring the numerators and the denominators and cancel common factors. However, if you can't find the factors that the numerator and denominator have in common, you can do prime factorization, which I explained in my video about how to add and subtract fractions. I'll show you in the following example that it actually saves time if you reduce before you multiply. So we see that we have to think a bit to find the common factor of 91 and 28. The common factor of 91 and 28 is 7. So 91 divided by 7 is 13. And 28 divided by 7 is 4. So we get 13 over 4. Let's contrast that by simplifying before we calculate the products. Always check if you can simplify the numerator and the denominator of the first fraction, or the numerator and the denominator of the second fraction, so on and so forth. We immediately see that the common factor of 14 and 7 is 7. So we have 13 times 1 is 13, and 2 times 2 is 4. You see, this was much less complicated than simplifying at the result at the end. But be careful, you can never do this when you are adding or subtracting fractions. We can only do this when multiplying fractions. Let's do another example that shows that simplifying at the beginning is much easier than simplifying at the end. 3 over 8 times 24 over 39. We discover that 24 and 8 is divisible by 8. 3 times. And 8 is divisible by 8 once. 39 is divisible by 3 13 times, and 3 is divisible by 3 once. Hence we get 1 times 3, which is 3, and 1 times 13, which is 13. So we get 3 over 13. If we didn't simplify at the beginning, we would multiply 3 times 24 and 8 times 39, which is much more complicated to do. Without simplifying at the beginning, we end up getting 72 over 312. 72 divided by 2 is 36, and 312 divided by 2 is 156. 36 divided by 2 again is 18, and 156 divided by 2 is 78. And then 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 78 divided by 2 is 39. And then finally 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 39 divided by 3 is 13. Let's look at another example with 3 fractions. 14 over 2 times 2 over 12 times 3 over 2. No matter how many fractions you have, simplify the fractions whenever possible and then just multiply all the numerators to get the numerator in the solution and all the denominators to get the denominators in the solution. At the end, simplify again if possible. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. There are many ways to cancel out the numbers. Either way, we get 7 over 4. Let's look at an example where we have to multiply a fraction with a whole number. 5 over 9 times 5. In this case, we write the 5 as a fraction by adding a 1 under it. So it becomes 5 over 1. Five times 5 is 25. And 9 times 1 is 9. What if we have a proper fraction like here? 2 1 over 5 times 1 over 4. Here we have to write the proper fraction 2 1 over 5 as an improper fraction. We do this by multiplying the whole number, the 2, by the denominator, the 5. And then adding the result, which is 10, to the numerator and keep the denominator. This gives us 11 over 5. Eleven times 1 is 11, and 5 times 4 is 20. Let's focus on dividing fractions. Dividing fractions is also very simple, like multiplying fractions. The only thing we have to do first is to keep the first fraction the same and multiply with the reciprocal of the second fraction. Does it make sense to define division as the same as multiplying something by its reciprocal? Let's look at 8 divided by 2, which is 4. If we multiply 8 by the reciprocal of 2, which is 1 over 2, we also get 4. Whether we divide by 2 or multiply by 1 over 2, we get the same result. So remember, dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. Let's look at this example. 1 over 2 divided by 1 over 4. Hence, we have 1 over 2 multiplied with the reciprocal of 1 over 4, which is 4 over 1. Now we see that we can simplify, but be careful. You can only simplify if you have the multiplication sign between the fractions. Do not simplify if you have the division sign between the fractions, and absolutely never if you have an addition or subtraction sign between the fractions. Okay, what do we have here? 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. One times 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. 2 over 1 is 2 divided by 1, which is 2. Let's look at the next example. 4 divided by 1 over 8, which is 4 times the reciprocal of 1 over 8. So we have 4 times 8 over 1, which is 4 times 8. Which is 32. Let's look at another example. Negative 3 over 5 divided by 7, which is negative 3 over 5 times the reciprocal of 7. So we have negative 3 over 5 times 1 over 7. A negative times a positive is a negative. Remember, unlike signs produce a negative sign, and like signs produce a positive answer when multiplying. So we have 3 times 1 is 3, and 5 times 7 is 35. What about this one? 3, 1 over 4 divided by 2 over 3. When you have a mixed number like 3, 1 over 4, first turn it into an improper fraction before dividing. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. And keep the denominator. So we have 13 over 4 divided by 2 over 3. Keep the first fraction the same. Change the division sign to a multiplication sign. And flip the second fraction's numerator and denominator. Multiply straight across the numerator and the denominator. 13 times 3 is 39, and 4 times 2 is 8. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. Thanks for watching. This video is what I did for you. If you want to do something for me, hit the bell button, share and subscribe. Happy learning, everyone.